Spring 1862 here in For the People. And what has, I've only just done the reinforcements phase. Huge pile of Confederate forces ended up here. Hopes maybe that Lee would be in command of them. Unfortunately, all I drew was Polk. Lee is a subordinate officer over in the Army of Northern Virginia. I think I need to rearrange my officers. Given that Johnston has formed the Army of Northern Virginia, it's expensive to remove him. He's a good leader. I'm going to leave him up there. I think it was far more valuable for the Confederates to have good leaders in the West, from what I remember of the Victory Games game. And with Lee, well, see, that's different because you get more points in the East. But with Lee's tremendous value, he'll be a lot more active. So I want to get him over here, and I want him taking that command. That was my intention all along. A bunch of cav leaders come out for the Confederates as well. The Union, on the other hand, reinforced its army somewhat. Mississippi's still, or the Missouri's still pretty small, but the Tennessee, which is the one down here, didn't grow that much. It didn't look like it had anything in front of it until after the railing and creation of that army over and over. It's not yet there. Army of the Cumberland, Army of the Potomac, both huge, huge behemoths. And, I think I'm going to, I have this desire to try to smash through here, especially if there's an army back here. I'm going to have to try to break it. On the other hand, it's the same kind of situation here. Really, if I want to make any motion there, I've got to smash through. Of course, I don't have an army to save there. On the other hand, where things are the best, down here, I could probably take Arkansas. What is it? I've got 2. I need 4 more areas. The Tennessee swings over. That would be really easy. I've got to take Little Rock, though. No question there. And that would be a nice little blow. But Confederates are passing in terms of they're not going to do a campaign to start things off. So it's going to be the Union's turn. Well, the Union's been playing cards. Beaufort, Port Royal captured, and then Gideon Wells naval program to improve the naval situation. They could have moved the blockade up, but they really want the amphibious assault capability. They don't know how else to get rid of Louisville. They can't even just march over because there's a fort there now. So it's really tough, and the army that's facing them is sitting not on the river. It's really an uncomfortable position. Luckily, they have Curtis, who they can move down. And that may be important because not only did the Confederates move Lee here, but he created the Army of Mississippi. And we have that here, a couple of cav leaders. He got to keep Polk as a bullet catcher. But they swept down and converted 3 territories. Now, another option would have been to directly fight the Army of the Tennessee, but instead they're looking at sweeping in through Memphis and cutting it off. The Union's got to do something about that. But right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Kentucky is going to go Confederate if they don't do something about that. They got to make their decisions here. What they're gonna manage to accomplish. Well, the Union Army of the Tennessee swept over and attacked at Little Rock. It was driven back and defeated, but it wiped out Pemberton's force. Weirdness about this game. The winner of a combat can be completely eliminated. But after that, the Confederates moved the Army of Mississippi up here to Memphis. Probably were going to build a fortress there. That was threatening supply since Little Rock wasn't Union yet. So I activated the Army of the Missouri, slipped through. Enough of Arkansas is captured at this point that if nothing changes, and I don't know if anything's likely to change because the Confederates can't cross the river until they build a fort there. But if nothing changes, that'll end up swinging over and becoming a subdued state, I guess. The Army of the Missouri is in Louisiana right now, but it's very close and can just knock Texas out as well if it takes another action. That would also be very potent. Something I had forgotten to mark, Memphis had already been destroyed, and now Little Rock is. So we're seeing the point spread. The Union's at 125, the Confederates are at 89. Okay, so the Union swung down with the big old Army of the Cumberland, leaving a fair pile behind with Rosecrans. The Confederates could have gone across and attacked that, but instead they played a minor campaign, moved only into Frankfort. They didn't get intercepted. They're afraid of the Army of the Cumberland. It's fairly big. Their own Army of the Tennessee is significantly less, a third the size. Yes, it has better leadership and could probably win a fight, but they don't need to. At this point, all they need to do was get Frankfort. Now they have enough places they can convert Kentucky, and they're willing to do that without the risk of a battle. The other side of their minor campaign, their second, was to stream across, take Madison, slam into the Army of the Tennessee here at Elizabeth, in which they defeated it rather handily, 3-1 losses. Pope was killed, as was Morgan. So now the Union has an army with no leaders, which is an odd situation, but it's allowed to happen. At their next possible reinforcement phase or whatever, they must try to fill that army up. All right. Finishing things up, the Army of the Missouri was worried, rightfully, that they were going to lose their supply link from Little Rock, so they struck down and did take Texas. Just grabbed it, and it's going to fall. However, the Army of the Mississippi slammed into Little Rock, destroyed the Army of the Tennessee, which is going to cost destruction of an army. The Union is going to lose 10 strategic will, plus 3 more for the reverse of direction. And we'll put this here. We're seeing an interesting situation here, aren't we? Again, though, like in the last game, or like in this game so far, not in the last game, the East, absolutely quiet. Kentucky's going to fall to the Confederates this turn. Texas to the Union. Arkansas is not falling. Among other things, the Confederates took Little Rock back. It's still destroyed, but they took it. They've set up so that they control the Mississippi from Memphis down. They also control, what is this, the Tennessee across here. They do not have any. The Union controls the Cumberland, I believe. All right. And, of course, the Union controls the Ohio, except for right here. I'll do all the end-of-term stuff. Okay, so that's the end of spring of 1862. We're moving into summer. I want to briefly go over a couple of things. Obviously, what I said before, Texas and Kentucky fell. But what's interesting about Kentucky falling is it converts all of the squares that don't have a Union strength point in them to Confederate. That meant this guy is out of supply. Ouch. He had to suffer double attrition. He's now getting to a more manageable size. He'll also not be able to get reinforcements, etc. as easily. So that's going to be a very painful factor for the Union. Game is still seeming a little bit too fluid for what I would think. I don't know if I'm still blundering, but it feels like I'm being a lot more careful, and I don't know how much it's representing the realities of the American Civil War in these early stages. Certainly Sherman's march was similar to what just happened here, except it didn't get cut off. Not sure what I did to open up that risk. Maybe overextending a little bit with the Union in pushing down this way. I'm not sure. All right, well, we'll see. Okay, so here we are in summer of '62. And I did the reinforcements, etc. The Union looks like it's trying to build up another army here in Bloomington under Rosecrans. He's got a lot of strength points, 11 strength points. He's hoping to try to save the Army of the Cumberland that way, and at the same time, perhaps destroy the Army of Tennessee. Confederates were unable to really reinforce the Army of Mississippi, so it's still low on strength points. Got a pile of leaders. He pulled a new one, Longstreet, over there. And this is a turn where the Confederates get a lot of good leaders. They get Longstreet, they get Jackson, and I think someone less important. Oh, Pemberton came back. Okay. So they get a couple of really good leaders. Now, the Confederates had a harder time putting their points. They lost one of their blockade runners. They made a failure here. Basically, they fail only on a 1 right now. So they took a strategic war penalty for that, or will penalty. But they still are getting a decent number of troops. I'm worried that even though I know I mentioned it, I somehow failed and actually gave reinforcements during the fall 1861. I'm going to look back at the video and make sure, but I have this fear. It's one of the problems with stepping away and coming back. I may have actually done. Okay, so the Confederates lost 1 point for Texas, but they gained a point for Kentucky. So they kind of broke even with a wash there. That's about it. So we have some actions, but one is oh bother, I built this army. I was talking about it before. It still can't cross here. There's still a fort there. So what's been mainly happening is the Union moved back to Falmouth and then to Lexington again. Was planning on pushing against the Army of Tennessee, and they were defeated. They were caught in Lexington by an intercept. Army of Tennessee is now sitting there. And the Confederates moved to Paducah and built themselves a fort there. Other than that, not much has happened, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. So that's the end of the summer '62 turn. Let me go over a little bit of what happened. Not much, really. The Army of the Missouri pushed or scared away the Army of Mississippi and ended up grabbing some territory here. But they really have to deal with the Army of Mississippi now. It's tiny in comparison right now, but it has good leadership, and they have to deal with it so that they can cut down and maybe take New Orleans. Because right now, leaving it in their backfield leaves their one supply route closed. Army of the Missouri was the only one that was able to move significantly because it has that great leader, General Burnside. I love that he's got the good movement rating in this because he was very active, at least in some times. He had horrible cases of the slows at others. Up here, my blunder with the Army of the Tennessee, and it's not entirely a blunder. I have to protect that route because otherwise the Confederates can slide up that way. But I don't think I have to protect it that heavily, and I think I should be trying to cut down and fight here because of Paducah being fortified now. It's almost too late. but they've been stuck there. The Confederate Army of Tennessee pushed the Army of the Cumberland back out of Kentucky. They can't go further here because they can't even build a fort here at Cincinnati, so they can't cross that river easily. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. We moved a few little forces around just to try to reposition, but really no change on the board, and that's bad news for the Union. The only thing they managed to do was increase their amphibious assault rating up to something pretty potent, but they haven't been doing any. So here we are in the fall, and the stalemate news appearing like it's just going to continue if I don't do something with the Union, and obviously they have to. The Army of Mississippi's been built up to be able to match the Army of the Missouri, but the cards that were dealt lead me to believe I'm not so sure I want to fight that battle anymore. Union built up a force under Hooker at Cairo, mainly to protect this against some possible Confederate action. They're going to have to move the Army of the Cumberland out of where it is, or make an attack through Falmouth. It's a bigger army, but the leadership just isn't that good. On the other side, I've got pressure to move the Army of the Potomac. It seems like the only thing that can brush through anything. Northern Virginia is much smaller. Leadership is good, no question, with Jackson there. But I gotta try to do something to loosen things. And unless I'm getting naval moves, which you can use a 3-point move to do so, but attacking a fortress that's manned seems dangerous. Of course, I got Fort Gadsden down here, but you gotta clear everything for it to make sense. The amphibious invasion, bonus though, may make that a possibility at this point. So the Union opened things up by moving Hooker out of here. He attacked in 2 spaces, Paducah and Columbus, took the fort out here, took the unit out here. Unfortunately, he got killed. He was planning on moving forward into Dover as well, but Hooker's dead now, and his army, well, his corps didn't do quite as much as I'd hoped. Much worse, the Union's got a handful of 2 cards, and the only thing they can move with it is the Army of the Missouri right now. However, the first move and attack was sufficient to trigger the Emancipation Proclamation, which the Confederacy was holding. And he's forced to play it at this point, actually. Yep. So the Confederacy loses 10. First of all, this flips over. The Emancipation Proclamation is in effect, which means the Confederates will be taking strategic will losses every fall as well, due to war guilt, supposedly. Confederacy loses 10 strategic will, bang, down to 60. The Union loses 5. It's come down to 117, but then they lose 3 more for flipping, because they change directions. And this is now removed from the deck. This is the Confederate play for the turn. Ouch. Okay, let me try that again. The Union made a landing at Fort Gadsden, took that. Oh, I forgot this. The Confederates fortified Vicksburg, and then the Union slid the Army of the Cumberland down to Cairo, and the Union moved the Army of Mississippi up to try to face it. This is probably abandoning Arkansas. Now that there's no force here to really threaten out of Vicksburg, the Union can just slide up that way. What it's not abandoning is Louisiana. You need the river to take that. So we'll see what the Confederates can do. The Union should have made its landing here at Fort St. Philip Jackson. I'm not sure why I didn't. Well, here's a big moment. The Confederates played the forward to Richmond card, which forces the Army of the Potomac to start marching towards Richmond. It has to slam into the Army of the Virginia there. The reason why this is worthwhile is they draw a card out of the Union hand. This forces a Union move and gave the Confederates a different card. And it's only a 1-point card for them. Okay, so let's take care of this battle because this is probably a biggie. The Army of the Potomac has 12 strength points. Northern Virginia only has 6. It's still a medium battle. We just don't get those major battles, do we? It's only 2-1. Let's look at the positive bonuses here. The Potomac, both sides have cav. The Potomac has an attack value of +2. Northern Virginia has a defense of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. +2 to +6. Confederates get a big 11, which is going to hurt them. The Union only causes 1 casualty. Confederates cause 3. And now, let's take a look at the leader loss check. Confederates are going to lose someone. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3. They lost Van Dorn, which is a shame. He's a cool leader, and it's kind of a pity I've got him in with an army. But the Union is driven back. And, you know, that's what happens. Let me send this back up 1. Alright. Confederates took that chance to move the Army of the Mississippi up into Columbus, destroyed the force there because it had to retreat into Paducah, which doesn't have a political control mark. Actually, could have retreated by the river. Army of the Cumberland's up 1. Okay. Because they have river control there. So then they swung back down and attacked, grabbed New Madrid, which is really their weak spot here. They can't defend that space in the river. They just cannot defend right there, which is why Memphis is so key. That's the last point. Everything else is defensible, basically. But they don't want to be forced into that position. So the Army of Mississippi swung through, hit the Army of the Missouri, and drove it back as well. Again, 1 to 3 losses. However, in the first battle, the Confederates lost Longstreet. Their high values on the battle roll get them 10s, which give them a good chance of losing their generals. And Lee is now chasing Burnside back up through Arkansas. He managed to withdraw from one of the combats. One of them he had to fight. 2-1 losses there. This is about where we are. Not much converting over here. I think everything is pretty much static. Yeah. Alright. So now we have the Union holdings down here in the south, which really can't be touched too easily. I mean, the Army of Mississippi can charge down here and clear it out if they want. Lee's got a lot of movement, so he could conceivably do that, but he's got 2 worries. One, the Army of the Missouri, which isn't that potent anymore, and will have to go back and refresh itself somehow. It can't really build. It can't build beyond St. Louis. But the bigger one is the Army of the Cumberland. He's got to, if he swings back to defend that, he's giving things up to the Army of the Missouri. He was hoping to destroy it completely here as an effective force. That's why he played actually an important card. The Brazil recognizes Confederacy, which is worth 3 strategic will. Would have been 5, but it sets you up on the plus table, which is always dangerous. All right, I'm going to do the end-of-turn bookkeeping, but there's not much to do here except attrition. So I'm just going to wrap this and send it up.